Well, from what you can see in this table, despite the fact that we had 18 topics in the first call and 9 in the second call, more or less the participation actually doubled in the second call. That is, participation of academics at SME. I assume that everybody knows how the calls are managed. There's a first and second stage. In the first stage, only the SMEs and the academics form consortia. So this is what I'm referring to. So there's a strong enthusiasm and participation despite some of the concerns that there were about IP and overhead issues. However, what it turns out is that the success rate is very low. I'm here, of course, to represent the views of the member states, so I'm giving you some of the realities. But of course, this does not mean this is a failed approach. The reason is very simple. The reason is you have a very large pool of academics and a very small pool of industrialists from which you can only make one consortium for each project, for each topic. And this is why you have a very low success rate. So too many expressions of interest, maybe 20, 25. For some of the topics, only one of them will go through to get funding. Member state participation. Coming from a member state's perspective, as I said, that member states are looking how are our researchers doing in this new endeavor? Are we getting money out of the pot? And what it transpires is more or less what is happening for other EU-funded actions. That is, we more or less have an EU-15 and an EU-12 division. So approximately 85% of the participation comes from the 12 countries, with one or two exceptions, and 15% comes from 27 countries. So clearly, although this is not the forum, not the task of IMI to strengthen, to have a structuring effect on the European research area, one of the pillars of the Lisbon treaty, if you like, clearly we have weaknesses that have been identified through the various instruments that the EU is funding research. Now, down to more practical problems that we are facing, and we as member states are trying to resolve. If you participate to a research project under the Framework Programme 7 and you come up with a budget of €100 for your direct costs, you're going to get €120 out of the Commission pot, and if your institution takes out some overhead of that, then you're probably left maybe with less than €100 with what you need to perform your project. If you do the same calculation with IMI, you're going to get out less money than actually your direct costs, and this is an issue. So mathematics tell us that researchers will have to find some sort of co-financing in some cases to fund projects under IMI, and this is one of the issues we are tackling as Member States representative group, along with the Executive Office and the Governing Board. And what is our position on this? Our position on this, we should change the rules to apply to at least Framework Programme 7. This change should not apply to the pharmaceutical industry partners. So when they come to count their in-kind contribution, they should not use the 60% overhead, for instance. Fortunately and constructively, I dare say, this is also the position of FPR. Whatever you do with overheads, they say, you can change the rules. We don't need to be party of this change, which is very constructive. The Commission is yet to decide on this. I'm sure there are wider political issues. And this issue will be discussed in the July meeting of the Governing Board, where the Member State representative group is represented in the form of observer, but our voice is listen to very carefully. The other major issue is the IP issue. Ever since we were launched as a formal body, we immediately tackled this issue. We thought that there was a perception, and I emphasize the word perception, that IP rules needed to be looked into. So we asked the governing board to set up a working group, and this working group was set up, and it took a look at the key issues, and in February 2009 made some recommendations. I think there will be some discussion on this tomorrow. And it proposed two things. It proposed that there should be some clarification issues, and these clarification notes were implemented that would not change the fundamental principles of the policy. And there were also policy issues that perhaps needed to look into in greater detail. The board in March 2009 said, okay, I agree to the clarification notes, and empowered the executive office to draft the note, and that was implemented, and also asked the IP working group to carry on, and it is working on this. They had a meeting last week to come up with some suggestions on what to do with these policy issues, on which you will have a lengthy discussion tomorrow. So, and on this, I'd like to conclude and say that despite the fact that there is a strong enthusiasm over the Stage 1 submission, is it going to continue? And we very much like it to continue, because that is the rule of the game. In the fact, because we have this low success rate, we're always concerned because low success rate means dampening the enthusiasm. We, as a member state representative group, have made it clear that we expect that the overhead issue and the IP issue should be resolved in one way or another before the third call is launched. This is the current position of the member state representative group. Some of the wider issues that it's not really the remit of the member state representative group to discuss, but nevertheless there are issues that we're discussing back with our governments. Will it have a structuring effect in the research area? And in particular, are we going to change the notions of public-private collaborations? We, at member states, of course, we start off with pompous statements, and we very much like to see the 1 billion euros invested over the 5 years or so. The question is this going to have the effect that we are all envisaging? And my personal opinion is that, and this is, I express the personal opinion because it's not the remit of the state representative group to do that, we may just have to leave an open window here to discuss this issue with Framework Program 8 to see where we're going with public-private enterprises, because IMI has been such highly publicized endeavor, and we're all striving to make it happen, and I'm sure it will happen within the confines of the budget. But if it continues in one form or another later on and through the other framework programs, I think we'll send a very long-term message to our competitors. Thank you very much.